Hello everyone, and welcome back to Life Single Review. I hope you're all doing wonderfully today. We have something very special for you. A journey through time to see how choices shape our destinies in the most profound ways. 5 years. It sounds like such a simple measurement of time, doesn't it? But 5 years can completely transform a life. It can take you from darkness to light, or from comfort to despair. Today we're revisiting 3 people whose lives we've followed closely: Huyen, Deian, and Thuy. We're going to see where their choices from 5 years ago have led them today. What happens when you choose love over money? When you choose integrity over convenience? When you choose greed over gratitude? Do people really get what they deserve? Or is that just something we tell ourselves to feel better about an unfair world? Can karma really be real? The answers might surprise you, inspire you, or even break your heart a little. But I promise you, this is a story worth hearing. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's discover together what 5 years of consequences look like. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because stories like this deserve to be shared. 5 years had passed since that emotional confrontation in the small bamboo house, and the world had changed dramatically for Deian and Huyen. If you had told them back then that they'd be where they are today, they probably wouldn't have believed you. Life had a way of surprising people who held on to hope and worked hard. The legal battle with Thuy finally concluded about 18 months after their confrontation. The court proceedings were long and emotionally draining. But justice prevailed. The judge ruled in Dee's favor, recognizing that Thuy had abandoned the marriage 3 years prior and had been living with another man. She had no legitimate claim to the land that belonged to Dee's mother. The coastal road project that Thuy had been so desperate to profit from did go through, and the compensation was substantial, more money than Dei had ever seen in his life. But Dei wasn't the kind of man to be cruel, even to someone who'd hurt him. He gave Thuy a small settlement, enough to help her get started somewhere else, as a gesture of closure and moving forward. With the remaining money, Dei and Huyen sat down and planned their future carefully. They didn't want luxury or extravagance. They wanted security, stability, and the ability to provide Maya with opportunities they'd never had. They decided to open a small convenience store in a developing neighborhood near the coast. It wasn't glamorous, but it was smart. Dee used his connections from years of working at the docks to negotiate good deals with suppliers. He knew which wholesalers were honest, which products sold well, and how to manage inventory efficiently. Huyen brought something equally valuable to the business: her warmth and her genuine care for people. The store opened on a sunny morning 3.5 years ago, and from day one, it felt right. Huyen had a gift for remembering customers' names, asking about their families, and making everyone feel welcome. Elderly customers loved her because she'd help them carry their bags to their motorbikes. Young mothers appreciated how she'd entertain their children while they shopped. She often threw in a little extra fruit or a small discount for people she knew were struggling financially. And somehow, the generosity always came back to them tenfold. Word spread quickly about the honest couple who ran the store with such integrity. Business grew steadily, month after month. They reinvested profits wisely, expanding their product selection and adding fresh vegetables that Huyen grew in a small plot behind the store. They started a delivery service for elderly and disabled customers who couldn't easily get to the store, charging nothing extra for the service. It was just the right thing to do. Maya, now 10 years old, had grown into a bright, confident child. She wore her school uniform with pride and helped out at the store after classes, carefully counting change and greeting customers with the same warm smile as her mother. 2 years ago, Dee had officially adopted her. The paperwork was finalized, and Maya could finally call him what she'd wanted to all along. Dad. The joy on both their faces that day was something neither Huyen nor Day would ever forget. Last year, they had achieved something that once seemed impossible. They bought a house. Not a mansion, not even a large house. Just a modest concrete home with 3 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and most importantly, a quiet study room where Maya could focus on her homework without distractions. The old bamboo house, where they'd weathered so many storms together, now served as additional storage for the shop's inventory. 3 months ago, they'd managed to buy a car. It was used, a 12-year-old sedan that had definitely seen better days, but it ran reliably. Day maintained it carefully, and it served its purpose beautifully, taking Maya to school every morning and occasionally allowing them to drive to the countryside to visit Dee's elderly mother on weekends. Their life wasn't perfect. They still worked long hours. Money was sometimes tight. They still worried about Maya's future, about saving enough for her university education, about unexpected expenses. But they were happy, genuinely, deeply happy. They had each other, they had their daughter, they had honest work, and they had the respect of their community. While Day and Huyen's life was blossoming, Thuy's world was collapsing in ways she never could have imagined. After losing the court case and receiving the small settlement from Dee, Thuy felt bitter and cheated. She convinced herself she deserved more, that she'd been treated unfairly. In her anger and wounded pride, she made decisions that would destroy her life completely. Enter Khan, a charming businessman who seemed to appear at exactly the right moment. He was handsome, well-dressed, drove an expensive car, and showered Thuy with attention at a time when she felt rejected and worthless. He told her she deserved better, that she was too beautiful and sophisticated to settle for anything less than luxury. He promised her the world, and desperately wanting to believe in something, she accepted. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. Khan took her to expensive restaurants, bought her designer clothes and jewelry, and introduced her to his circle of wealthy friends. Thuy felt vindicated. See, she'd made the right choice leaving Dee all those years ago. Look at her now, living in a luxury apartment, being treated like a queen, finally getting the life she deserved. But Khan was not who he pretended to be. He was a sophisticated con artist who specialized in targeting women with some money or assets. His entire operation was built on lies: the luxury apartment, the expensive car, the business connections, all carefully constructed illusions designed to inspire trust and extract money. When Thuy mentioned the settlement she'd received from the divorce, Khan's interest sharpened, though he hid it well. Over several months, he carefully manipulated her. He talked about a can't-miss real estate development project, showed her forged documents and fake permits, introduced her to actors pretending to be investors and government officials. The returns, he promised, would be astronomical. They'd be millionaires within 2 years. Thuy invested everything. Every dong from her settlement went into Khan's fictional project. But he wasn't finished. He convinced her to take out loans, using what little assets she had left as collateral. The banks, seeing the professional-looking documents Khan provided, approved the loans. Thuy signed papers she didn't fully understand, blinded by greed and the promise of wealth. Then one morning, exactly 14 months after they'd met, Khan disappeared. Thuy woke up to find him gone. His phone number no longer worked. The luxury apartment, she discovered, had been rented month to month under a fake company name. And the lease had expired. The car was returned to a leasing company. The bank accounts they'd supposedly shared were empty, and she'd never actually had access to them anyway. Worse still, the loans were very real. The debt collectors started calling within days. Thuy's world, already crumbling, completely collapsed. Within 2 months, everything she had left was seized by creditors. Her remaining jewelry, her clothes, even the furniture in the apartment she was renting, all taken to partially pay debts she could never fully repay. She tried desperately to find work, but at 43 years old with no real job skills and a massive gap in her employment history, no one would hire her. The few friends she'd made in Khan's wealthy circle disappeared immediately. They'd never been real friends, just people who enjoyed being around perceived success. Within 6 months of Khan's disappearance, Thuy was homeless. She slept in cheap hostels when she could scrape together enough money, and on the streets when she couldn't. Her health deteriorated rapidly. The stress, combined with poor nutrition and exposure to the elements, triggered a cascade of health problems. She developed a chronic cough that wouldn't go away, severe joint pain that made walking difficult, and a persistent weakness that left her exhausted all the time. The beautiful, proud woman who'd once looked down on Huyen's poverty now knew that poverty intimately. She knew the shame of asking for spare change, the hunger of going days without a proper meal, the cold of sleeping on concrete, the fear of where the next day's survival would come from. It was a cold Wednesday morning in late November when their paths crossed for the final time. Thuy had spent the night huddled in a doorway, shivering despite the layers of torn clothing she wore. Her stomach ached with hunger. She'd been sitting outside a small store for the past hour, not really begging, just existing, hoping someone might take pity and offer something. She barely recognized herself anymore. Her once beautiful face was weathered and gaunt, her skin damaged by years of sun exposure and malnutrition. Her hands, which had once been manicured and soft, were now rough, dirty, and scarred. Her hair, previously professionally styled and colored, was now matted, gray, and unwashed. She was only 43, but she looked 20 years older. Around 8:30 in the morning, a car pulled up to the store. It wasn't a luxury vehicle, just a modest older sedan that had clearly been well maintained despite its age. The passenger door opened, and a young girl in a school uniform emerged, chattering excitedly about something. She looked about 10 years old with bright, intelligent eyes and a happy smile. Dad, don't forget you're picking me up at 3 today. We have that parent-teacher conference, remember? The girl called out. I remember, Maya. I'll be there early. Came the response from the driver's seat, and Thuy's entire body went rigid. She knew that voice. Even after 5 years, even weakened and barely conscious from hunger, she knew that voice. Day stepped out of the car, and Thuy's breath caught in her throat. He looked good, healthy, content. A little older, but wearing his age well. He was dressed in simple, clean clothes, nothing expensive but well-maintained. There was a calmness about him, a settled happiness that radiated from his posture and expression. Then the back door opened and a woman emerged, and Thuy felt something break inside her chest. Huyen. But not the struggling, worried Huyen of 5 years ago. This Huyen had filled out slightly, no longer appearing undernourished. Her skin glowed with health. She wore modest but clean clothes, and she moved with a quiet confidence that came from being secure and loved. Maya, do you have your homework folder? Huyen called out, her voice warm and filled with maternal concern. Yes, Mom. I double-checked this morning, Maya responded cheerfully. Mom. The word hit Thuy like a physical blow. That little girl, the daughter Huyen had been raising alone 5 years ago, now had a complete family. A mother and a father who clearly adored her. Thuy watched, frozen, as the 3 of them walked toward the store. She heard their conversation, ordinary and beautiful in its mundanity. Day joking about burning breakfast that morning, Maya teasing him about his cooking skills, Huyen laughing, a sound of pure, uncomplicated joy. They were discussing dinner plans, whether Maya had completed her math homework. Completely normal family concerns that spoke of a life filled with love and stability. As they reached the store entrance, Huyen's eyes swept across the area and landed on Thuy. For a moment, there was no recognition, just the brief, kind glance one might give any person sitting on the street. Then Huyen's eyes widened slightly. She stopped walking. Thuy saw the exact moment recognition dawned. She saw Huyen's expression shift from casual awareness to shock, then to something more complex. Sadness, perhaps, or disbelief. Huyen said something quietly to Dee, who looked over and also froze, his face showing a mixture of surprise and concern. Maya had already gone into the store, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Day seemed torn, uncertain what to do. But Huyen, after a long moment of hesitation, walked slowly toward Thuy. Up close, the contrast between them was devastating. Huyen, healthy and cared for, looking down at Thuy, broken and homeless. Their positions had completely reversed from that day 5 years ago. Ms. Thuy. Huyen's voice was gentle, almost disbelieving. Is that really you? Thuy couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her emotions too overwhelming. She could only nod slightly. Are you? Huyen paused, clearly struggling to find appropriate words. Are you okay? Do you need help? Are you hungry? The kindness in those questions, coming from the woman Thuy had mocked and threatened 5 years ago, shattered what little pride Thuy had left. Tears began streaming down her face, cutting clean paths through the dirt on her cheeks. "I don't deserve your kindness," Thuy finally whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and illness. "I don't deserve anything." Huyen was quiet for a moment. Then she did something Thuy never expected. She knelt down on the cold pavement, bringing herself to Thuy's level, looking directly into her eyes with genuine compassion. "Everyone deserves kindness," Huyen said softly. "Everyone deserves a second chance." She reached into her purse and pulled out some money, pressing it into Thuy's trembling hand, along with the bag containing bread and fruit from the store. "Please, take this. Get something warm to eat. And if you need help, there's a shelter 2 streets over. They can help you." As Huyen stood up and walked back toward her family, back toward the store she and Day had built together, back toward the life they'd created through hard work and love, Thuy remained on the cold pavement, clutching the money and food, watching them disappear into their store. Through the window, she could see them inside. Day had his arm around Huyen's shoulders, clearly asking if she was all right. Maya was showing them something in her school bag, completely carefree and secure in her parents' love. They were a family, complete and whole and happy. 5 years, 2 completely different paths, 2 utterly different destinations. Day and Huyen had chosen love over material wealth, integrity over shortcuts, hard work over easy money, and they'd found genuine happiness, not the kind measured in luxury items or bank balances, but the kind measured in Maya's laughter, in quiet evenings together, in the respect of their community, in waking up next to someone who truly loves you. Thuy had chosen wealth over love, greed over gratitude, shortcuts over honest work. And she'd lost everything, not just material possessions, but her health, her dignity, and her hope. She sat alone on a cold street, holding charity from the woman she had once mocked, living proof that our choices have consequences that echo through the years. This story isn't meant to be cruel or to celebrate anyone's suffering. It's a reminder that the choices we make today create the life we live tomorrow. Real wealth isn't found in bank accounts or luxury apartments. It's found in genuine relationships, in honest work, in the ability to sleep peacefully at night, knowing you've treated people with kindness and integrity. Day and Huyen chose the harder path, the path of patience and hard work, and genuine love. And 5 years later, they're living proof that good things really do come to those who choose wisely and work honestly. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. What do you think? Do you believe people get what they deserve? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Life Single Review for more stories that touch your heart and make you think. Until next time, remember, choose love, choose integrity, and choose the kind of life you'll be proud of 5 years from now.